So we're stopped here outside number 300 Queen Street. And 300 Queen Street was actually the first address of Mary Ann Smith's shop, which was called Smith's Cheap Drapery. Except, of course, it wasn't actually here because the numbering, people who do research will know that a lot of the things have changed over time, and one of the things that's changed is the numbering on Queen Street. So in 1880, when Mary Ann Smith set up her store, number 300 was up the road a little bit further on the corner of Airedale Street in Queen Street. This book here was published in at their 125th anniversary, so they're 144 years old now, but there's a beautiful illustration of her shop, which I'll pass around. So there you are, Smith's Cheap Drapery. So like a lot of department stores in New Zealand, they were started by women. People think that it was the sort of pioneer men who came to New Zealand and established business, but they were actually started by women, and this is one such case. So Mary Ann started the cheap drapery. She went so well in the 1880s with so many people coming in who needed clothes and textiles that before long she had to get her husband to come and work with her, also Smith, William, and her brother, Andrew Caughey. And they joined the company and it became Smith and Caughey's Drapers and Clothiers, yes. So that was, and in 1884, they were renting that place up there. But this place here, where the Mac part is of Smith and Caughey's, came on the market, and they bought that. And so they bought that very, very first shop on Queen Street in 1884. About 10 years later, they had bought the shop next door, which is the other shop front, and they bought the shop behind. So it had expanded already hugely, 2 stories, 3 stories high. That one at the back was later in 1926. There was an opera house there. It was called Fuller's Opera House. It burnt out. Smith and Caughey's, who were doing really, really well at this time, bought it. And so that's the expanse of it. And so later on, when we step inside, you will still see, you can still, in Smith and Caughey's, see the 4 buildings. So this is the shop window. And shop windows in the time when people still shopped by coming to Queen Street and shopping, the windows were where was a sort of, where you saw what was happening, what was in fashion. And it was a really big deal. Yeah, so they put calico, so you've got calico curtains, and they shut the window, and then they construct the window display in behind the curtain. And then when it's all ready, they reveal it. And it used to be a real sort of tradition around that. So the new season, so when it was spring, the spring window, it would be a big secret, and the display department and things would be working on all the props and things for it. And then people would know which day the window was going to open, and they would come into town to see what the latest fashions were going to be when the Smith and Caughey window opened. So that's the sort of move that Smith and Caughey's made. When they started, they were primarily clothiers and drapers. So drapers are the sellers of fabric. And clothing was very, very fitted, and so almost everything was tailor-made. You had to be tailor-made for you. And they worked that out very quickly, and so they employed tailors and milliners and dressmakers to make their clothes. And they had huge textile departments. This was their biggest department, actually, the textiles, clothing, dress fabrics. For close to 100 years, that was their biggest selling department, was textiles. And they had, which we'll see when we go inside, daylight spaces. So when you went into the shop and you saw the fabric, the colour that you saw was the colour that you bought. It wasn't like the fluorescent lights where you might think it's a bit bluey and come outside and it actually turns out to be green or whatever. So their fabric sales were the big deal for them.